What are evangelicals? What classifies as being a part of that group? In this episode, we're going to be looking at a little bit of the history and arrive at a general definition as to what would be considered an evangelical. But more importantly, I would like to present a forward-thinking idea of evolving the genre. Just like music evolves, so should ideas. And the term that I would like to propose is this term of the hipster evangelical. So before we begin our exploration of the evolution of the evangelical genre, I want to establish this key point, is that in order to understand the evolution of the evangelical tradition, or what I will call the genre, we have to compare it to music, right? Just like rock music has a history. There's a classical period of rock music, and then there's a modern period of rock music. In the same manner, any other topic, whether it's science or psychology or philosophy, there's a classical period and then there's a modern period. And throughout this period, things change, right? Not everybody thinks identical. And that is exactly how the evolution of the evangelical tradition also compares, right? So, whether one is studying the history of politics, music, science, or any other subject at an academic level, one can also analyze the religious landscape of America, which goes very deep. And one can look at it at a very academic, granular level. But for the purposes of getting a general overview, something that we can work with and, make new again here in the modern period of the 21st century, we're just going to look at a general overview. And since, this is a complicated area, one of the best ways to keep it fun and modern and practical is by comparing it to, American rock music. So by keeping this comparison between the evolution of rock music and the evolution of the evangelical genre, it will help us get a better understanding. So let's begin by looking at a brief historical survey of the term and the tradition. So the word evangelical comes from the Greek euangelion. That's a difficult word to pronounce in Greek. Now the Latin is evangelium, which is a lot easier. And it translates to good news. And it eventually evolved into the word gospel and has been used ever since. Now the historical figure who is accredited with starting this Protestant Reformation is Martin Luther. And, they were protesting the authority of the Catholic Church. So followers of Martin Luther could be considered evangelicals, right? So the theological roots can be traced to the Protestant Reformation in the 16th century, particularly by Martin Luther. Now, a more recent figure in the 20th century is by a man by the name of Billy Graham. So throughout periods in American history, there's been various revival movements. They come and go in various different names and genres. And one, key figure is by the name of Billy Graham. So Billy is one of the most prominent figures in evangelical history. And he is definitely the poster boy for the movement. And he is the figure in which I would like to associate the term with. And he serves as a perfect classical reference point to begin our exploration and evolutionary process towards this new term called Hipster Evangelical. But before we move on to establish this more modern term of the Hipster Evangelical, let's briefly look at a study conducted by the Pew Research Center. So there are roughly around 78 million evangelicals in America, but not all are identical. Evangelicals are very diverse. They are politically diverse, economically different, and come from various different racial backgrounds. And even in terms of religious practices, not all evangelicals have the same beliefs or practices. In fact, only 1/2 of the American evangelicals attend church on a weekly basis. And nearly a quarter of the American evangelicals say that they almost never attend religious services, according to a Pew survey. So that's more than 17 million evangelicals who don't go to church. So Pew takes an approach to putting people in, let's say, boxes of the different types of Christians. So there are 3 Protestant groups that the Pew Research Center puts people into, and one of them is the evangelical group, the second one is the mainline group, and then the third is the Black Protestants, right? Now there's also a difference in beliefs and practices. 72% of evangelicals pray daily, and another 21% weekly or monthly. 95% say scripture is relevant to them personally, but only about half read the Bible weekly. So more than a quarter of evangelicals told Pew Research that they seldom or never read the Bible. 75% of evangelicals feel a sense of spiritual peace and well-being on a monthly basis. However, that is not an experience they have with other Christians. So 60% of evangelicals attend church on a monthly basis, and 40% attend prayer meetings, Bible studies, Sunday school, or small groups once a month or more. So there's a lot of evangelicals that do not worship with other evangelicals. So this shows that there's a wide variety, a wide spectrum of evangelical practices, right? So what we can conclude so far is that the evangelical landscape is very wide, very diverse. There are evangelicals from various different backgrounds, differences in education, in beliefs and practices. And what we can conclude is that they're not all identical. There's going to be controversies and mistakes and scandals because it is a part of human nature to make mistakes. But nevertheless, as long as there is evolution and progress, I think that is a good thing. And one of the best ways to understand this evolutionary process, whether it's in a social movement or a scientific movement, is by relating it to music. Just like, for example, the genre of rock music evolves, so should the genre of evangelicals. So let's now draw an analogy between the spirituality of the evangelicals and the spirit of rock music. And by comparing the two, it gives us a better image as to where we are heading to with these ideas that I am bringing forth. So just like in modern rock music, there has been key figures that have inspired and really been iconic in the rock music world, such as the Beatles, Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, Prince, Nirvana, and so on. In the similar way, in the evangelical genre of spirituality and religion, there has been many key figures. Now, since I am relatively new to the evangelical world, the only figure that I am vaguely familiar with is Billy Graham, right? I'm sure that there's many other iconic figures that haven't come to my radar yet. So Billy Graham is the Elvis Presley, right, of the evangelicals. So I have to admit, I'm not a scholar of Billy Graham. So therefore, I am just recently getting to know his ideas and and a little bit about his movement, right? Because we want to study the classics. We want, especially key figures, right? And I'm doing it as in an effort to know where the Spirit is coming from, right? Now, the purpose of the study is to just familiarize ourselves with the topic, right? And by comparing, Billy Graham with Elvis Presley, both representatives of the 20th century, this gives us a better image of what we are driving this idea to. So, a conclusion right off the back that we can draw from the ideas that I have presented so far is that evangelicals have a wide variety of backgrounds, right? If evangelicals were a musical genre, there would be a lot of subgenres of evangelicals, right? Just like there are a lot of subgenres of rock music. So the definition and scope of evangelicalism has always been a subject of debate by theologians and scholars, because there isn't, one specific criteria that makes all evangelicals identical, just like there isn't a set of specific criteria to encompass the rock music world. And that opens up the opportunities, right? That opens up the doors and new avenues to see how we can develop the evangelical spirit, just like rock musicians are developing the rock music spirit, the spirit of rock. So now that we have established a basic understanding of what is an evangelical and a brief historical overview as to where it came from, primarily from the teachings of Billy Graham, we can now move on to the second half of this idea, which is to establish a new subgenre of evangelicals, right? Which I am temporarily calling the hipster evangelical, which I didn't get to in this video because we had to cover a lot of groundwork in order to understand where we're going, right? In order to understand where we're going, we have to understand a little bit about where we're coming from. So in the next video, we will cover part 2 of this idea of the hipster evangelical.